they would have lost the same way the Kings did. The Kings did everything right from a procedural standpoint. Okay, Mike Brown pulled out. He did everything that he could do. Sabonis and Fox was available. So Fox broke his finger or dislocated it. Came back, was tough, did everything. It didn't matter because generational talent. Yo, welcome to another episode of In Space. I'm your host, Chris Connor. Shout out to our good people at DraftKings Sportsbook, Birdsall Law Firm, as well as New York Life. I have a Kings jersey on, but this is a Pelican show. I got to let y'all know because last shows I did last week, if y'all missed them, John Morant, Derrick Rose comparison. I had some people asking me, like, I'm just supposed to talk about Pelicans all the time, man. Come on. Like, I know it's In Space. I know where I'm from and what I've been doing, but off season is low, man. We got to talk about other stuff, dog. So y'all just going to have to deal with it when it come out. But, like, we're going to rap about that hat behind me. Like, come on, man. Oh, and I got a chance to interview Lance Moore, which was dope. Former Super Bowl champion in the New Orleans Saints Hall of Fame and is a part of Buku Media now. So he's going to be doing a lot of Saints shows. So tap in. Also, man, we did a great Sunday show, which that video that I led the show with, if it wasn't breaking up too much, talking about the Pelicans, but diving into this topic a little bit, which kind of that show kind of spurred the idea for this one. So that was fun. Chaz dropped a show as well about my favorite team to look at in the offseason. Once again, the Toronto Raptors. I did so much work around the trade deadline, just knowing that they were going to make a trade with the Raptors. It didn't happen, but we did talk a lot about maybe being able to revisit some things in the offseason. Go check out Chaz and that show. Really good one. He dropped, I think, a couple of days ago. But so let's move forward. Sacramento Kings. Why do I have this jersey on? What does that have to do with the Pelicans? Well, if you missed the show Sunday, there were a lot of different topics, and the show is about an hour long. But one good question that was posed, and the Grizzlies were a part of this as well, is mainly, would you want to change? That's horrible. Change spots, change positions, change outlooks with Sacramento Kings. That was an example. The Kings had just got eliminated that particular day. Just going forward, organizations and everything. Or would you rather be in the Pelicans position right now? We know David Griffin said there's only about 5 teams that wouldn't want to trade rosters with the Pelicans. What y'all think? I do want to know about that. Do y'all think that, would you rather be in the Kings position right now, or even the Grizzlies position right now? Or are you comfortable where you at with the Pelicans? Now, Kings, I changed the question to, should the Pelicans look to follow the Sacramento Kings? And shout out to Five, because Five mentioned coaching mattering, but there was a point to where he was talking about, and we've all talked about it as fans, right? About mainly just making the most of what you have already, the execution of things. And that leads into identity, which is really what this show is about and is a big part of the Kings' success, identity and committing to that early on. Sure, they had some really good injury luck, health, and the guys that they brought in worked, but you don't even get a chance to get there if you don't pick an identity, establish it, and commit to it. And then, you end up 48 wins, third in the West. But outside of coaching, Five made the point that even if the Pelicans were healthy, just by the way that they were executing and going about the talents that they had, the way that they were using the pieces, he didn't feel like that team could really go very far. Maybe not more than the first round pick. I don't want to put words in the brother's mouth, but that's what I'm going off of. And then, look, Sacramento Kings are interesting because they're a team that, dating back to not last offseason, not last trade deadline, but the deadline before, they committed to something. Even if it was unpopular, They traded Tyrese Halliburton for Sabonis. It's a head scratcher to a lot of folks, including me. But what some of us missed was that, okay, well, that signals they're committing to De'Aaron Fox. Now, how do you build around him? How do you get him a classic 1-2 punch, someone that is going to fit and complement his game, and then build the pieces around that in this modern game? And then then from there, you see getting Kevin Huerter. You see Trey Lyles. You see Malik Monk, who was huge for them. You see moving Halliburton. It makes Davion Mitchell the clear guy, or clear first or second guy off the bench, dude, that defensive specialist, but is going to play big minutes and sometimes close games for that particular team. And that complemented not just De'Aaron Fox, but bringing in Sabonis. And it also gave you the rest of that season, last season, it gave you the opportunity to get Fox and Sabonis some time, some run together, to kind of learn each other versus having to do it at the start of this season. And that worked out. So did all of the moves for the most part. And look, sometimes, really just picking a side is, can take you far. And you watch the Pelicans a lot last year, and not even just last season, and a lot of that has to do with injuries, which, if you watch the show last week, was what a lot of my arguments were about. But it doesn't mean that even Ross, who mentioned that, is there a way to build a roster? I would say, I pointed at the Clippers as an example. Is there a way to build a roster that's centered around the unpredictability of the availability of your main guys, just to get into the dance and then hope they're healthy to kind of run from there? Of course, we would all want them to have the health that Sabonis and Fox had this year, of course, but history tells us that that's not possible. But back to the Kings for a second. They committed to offense that allowed them to put together a structure of, this is the pace that we're going to run. That also means, hey, we're kind of punting defense. All right, we're drafting Keegan Murray. We got shooters. We got movement shooters. We have a really good passing big who can create from himself in some respects. We have a point guard that wants to get to the cup, wants to work the midi. We're going to hope he improves as a shooter, and that's what we are going with. And we're going to run teams out of the building. We're going to outscore, outshoot them. And no matter what type of game and what type of opponent we're going against, that's what we're going to do. Even if that means, and shout out to Mike Brown, who came out and implemented a lot of Golden State sets. And you can do that when you have the parts to do some, even if you don't have Klay Thompson and Stephen Curry. I mean, it takes balls to come out and run Golden State sets against Golden State, But man, they had a tough game, a tough series, first round series against the Warriors, and the better gun won. Steph Curry was Steph Curry, and unfortunately, while the Kings committing to that side got them into the playoffs and got them a high seed, they got a bad roll of the dice playing against that team, right? A generational team with a lot of generational parts. They were able to take advantage, and have been here in so many times, take advantage of the Kings' weaknesses and put them on display for the world to see if they hadn't already. So, but identity. Chaz. I remember Chaz mentioned last offseason he would punt defense. So it was kind of like a similar situation with the Kings. Kind of set up, just punt defense, go full offense and outscore folks. Would that make, whether the Pelicans are missing players or not, would that make their life easy? I don't know. But I do know they have to pick an identity. An identity, Miami, the Grizzlies, that's why the Grizzlies were an example. And it was kind of to Five's point as well. Just simply picking an identity is going to make the execution clearer. It's going to make what the viewers watching clearer, and it will probably make life easier for the players if they know, can't be trying to figure it out during the season. And it has a lot of different, it's not that simple. But there has to be some level of organization, and maybe choosing an identity simply by the players that you're putting out there, making it as clear as possible. Look, this is what we have. This is what we need to do. Would make life easier for the players to adjust for a team that doesn't have a traditional point guard starting, for a team that looked like it had issues getting to its sets and points and just had a stagnant offense throughout stretches that wasn't a good brand of basketball throughout certain periods of the season. Now we know when Zion is healthy, that's supposed to look a little different. And look, man, I mean, identity, if you'd have gotten 60 games out of Zion and BI together, well, you had a different discussion, because you would have enough film to be able to say, all right, well, this is their identity, or this is what it should be. But unfortunately, the identity that we saw when those two were together wasn't the identity that were best for them separately when they had their best moments of the year. Zion when the team was first in the West, and Brandon when he came back from injury to end the year. They got to figure out what that looks like together. But the Kings didn't know that. They didn't know how many games Sabonis and Fox would play when they traded for Sabonis, and they didn't know that when they had the offseason of just gathering shooters and offensive talent and movement shooters and putting together a system where guys just played for each other. The ball moved so well. It allowed them to put a lot of teams in tough situations, and they made teams have to play like them. And unfortunately, you're just not able to do that when they're up right. That worked for the Kings, but their weaknesses were put on display in the playoffs. And that's where this question becomes interesting, because yes, I think the Pelicans should follow the Kings from that perspective. I think they should go a little bit more offensive centric wise. They should find a way. Look, man, after the year Trey Murphy had, you got to find a way. And we saw how deadly he became in transition specifically. We know the gravity that he's going to give in half court team. If he's spotting up 30 feet, you know what I mean? If he's spotting up that far behind the 3-point line. But just in transition alone, the type of pieces and parts the Pelicans can throw at you, makes them tough. But how many more of those guys, how many more of those shooters can you continue to add, those offensive pieces to go with the mixture of defensive guys you have, Herb Jones and Dyson Daniels and, Larry Nance when he's heavy, and if Nazi is brought back, y'all, Jose Alvarado, y'all get, where I'm going. Pelicans need to be a better shooting team. And the Kings committed to that, Keegan Murray as well, and it worked out for them. But, I mean, look, right? The Grizzlies are an example of a team that's consistent. You know what they're getting. You know what you're getting every year. With or without Ja Morant, they're going to finish top 5, top 4 in the Western Conference. And they haven't been able to get over the hump yet, but at least that is something that that level of consistency, I think it does matter for teams or for players that want to come and join and feel like I can be the finishing piece of that puzzle. But from a ceiling perspective, if you're able to get health, Zion Brandon or Jaren Jackson Jr., John Morant, it's a discussion. Bane and CJ rounding out, and Trey Murphy, who would you say is the fourth guy from Memphis? I mean, we'll have to see, because they have some interesting free agents that are coming up. But you know what I'm saying? And if it's Sacramento, Zion, Brandon, Trey, CJ, or Sabonis, Murray, Fox, you would give ceiling wise, you would give from a ceiling and a talent perspective, probably give it to the Pelicans. But those teams have found a way, a mixture of identity and availability, that's allowed the Kings to have the year that they have, and we will see if they can replicate it. And it's allowed the Grizzlies to be, a threat to do big things since the minute that Ja Morant joined the league. That's why that question is so good, because this year for the Pelicans, or this past season, it wasn't like about making a championship. I mean, we all want the Pelicans to be champions, but for me, it was about consistency. It was about making the playoffs back-to-back years. It was about giving Zion his first opportunity to make the playoffs. It was about showing so many different level of players what it's like to play in these sets, the continued growth of guys, more data with Zion and Brandon together to figure out, all right, well, putting Zion in the post when Brandon's out there consistently just ain't the move, or putting BI in the corner, just making him a three-point shooter. How do you build that? Or having Trey Murphy get his opportunities when they're available versus drawing up plays. Like, these things matter. And the Pelicans have to continue to build on that. Those are things that are a part of an identity, not just playing hard, not just how you not just your intensity levels. What are your philosophies? You know, what are your pet peeves as a team, as a roster, as a crew? What are you not allowing? What are your tendencies? Did I say that already? I may have. You know what I'm saying? Those are the things that build identities. But the easiest way for the Pelicans to do this, I think, starts with what Sacramento did before the coaching staff and the players could even have a word and could even, you know, build off of that ideology of sorts. It started with the moves that the front office made to support their guys. The Pelicans have to do something similar, and then hopefully it can trickle down to what Willie, the current or new staff, can put together and what the players are able to execute. So that was one of the reasons I really enjoyed that show, because, you know, last Sunday, the Pro Pels Talk show that we put together, because it was a lot of good points about a lot of things that we've all been frustrated about, but a lot of it does have to do with identity and organization and a sense of urgency towards that. Knowing what we're watching, even if it isn't 100% from a health perspective, how are you taking advantage of simply the assets and the things that you have? Are you making the most of what's available to you? Because if you can't make the most of what's available to you, even if it's not a win, you know, what does that say for what you're going to be able to do, even when the team is healthy? So those are some really good points by Chaz, Ross, and Five. We know, I mean, Lito's had a bunch of different conversations that go into that subject on Jonas Valanciunas alone. So really good show, and that's what that video was about. And this is why I'm here to kind of discuss, and this is why I have this damn Kings jersey on. So I'm gonna be interested to see how the Kings move from here, what their next move is. 48 wins may not be good enough to I bet it's 48 wins. It's not going to be good enough to be top 3 in the West next season. How do they build off of this? You know, and the same for the Grizzlies. And, you know, I even if it's just from a psychological, even if it's from a mental standpoint, I don't know if you built the team that the Kings have. I don't know if you build those roster parts, but you have to pick a side, and that alone, I think, could clear up a lot of the clutter and some of the things that are ailing the Pelicans. And then hopefully from there, this season, this failure is taken personal, and allowing these guys to really have a shot at whatever the West or the NBA looks like next season. And you can really only do that if you are available. And, you know, I'm hoping from Zion, from Brandon, and CJ. Well, we got it from CJ. I'm hoping those guys can end up doing it. But yeah, man, we'll see what happens. So, yo, appreciate y'all as always. Like I mentioned, I'm trying to do this show once a week. Sometimes it's gonna be Pelicans, sometimes it won't be. So, but shout out to y'all that showed up and, you know, and us, you know, supported last week's shows regardless. But, you know, I got all this Pelican stuff back here for a reason. Yeah, it's gonna be mainly them. But yeah, man, sponsors one more time: DraftKings Sportsbook, New York Life, as well as our good people at Birdsall Law Firm. Check out all the work that we're doing, of course, with Buku Media. Got a lot of stuff on the way. Another Sunday show coming up. And yeah, man, get in the comments. What team would you want to switch up or switch with? What team would what path would you like to realistically follow? Not something like Golden State. That happens never, right? What principles should the Pelicans follow going forward? And what changes need to be made to look like that? I'm really curious. Do you agree with me? Do you think I'm silly? Do you hate my jersey? Let me know. To the end, Najee.
In the building. I told you last time, get with us or get out of here, man.